Hello and welcome to today's video, and this video is a question and answer video for one of my classes at Highline College. It's for Art 149, which is artistic photography. Students ask questions and I will answer them in this video. A couple comments before I start with the questions and my answers. First, a lot of my answers will be similar. A lot of the answers will be it depends. And it depends on your specific situation. That'll be one thing it depends upon. It depends on what you hope to accomplish, your budget, lots of factors. So be aware there will be lots of that answer. It depends. And the second thing to be aware of in my answers is these are my answers. One person's opinion, and use that for, my suggestion when you have a question that can go a couple different ways is to get 5 or 6 opinions, maybe through the internet, through YouTube, wherever people you know, and then find the truth or the correct answer for you somewhere in the midst of that variety. So these are my answers. A lot of the answers will be it depends. I will get to the joke part in a minute, because I know you're waiting for it, so hang on for that. So here's our categories of our questions today. The categories are photography business, creativity and inspiration. Let's see, we've got portrait, gear, and miscellaneous, which is everything that didn't quite fit into those other categories. So here we go. We're gonna start with the business questions. One of the questions here is the place I'll introduce the joke. So one of the questions is, how do you make money at photography? And the joke is, the best way to make money today in photography is to sell your camera gear. So it's kind of sad, but not necessarily true. So there's lots of ways to make money in photography. Before you think about it though, there's lots of questions I would encourage you to ask yourself about yourself. We're all different in how we like to work. We're all different in how we like to associate or separate our creative from our financial. So be aware of those things, because when you are creating something that someone else will buy, you're going to be on a continuum of purely creative, this is what exactly I want, and purely commercial, this is exactly what my audience wants, what people will pay for. And somewhere hopefully in between is a happy place where you can find potentially commercial success and still artistic integrity. It depends. So ways you can make money in photography, categories of photography. There's portrait photography, which we'll get to in one of the questions below. Landscape, fine art, event, weddings, and things like that. So there's lots of commercial, architectural, journalism, there's a category of questions coming up on that. So there's lots of variety. And I encourage you to think about, if you enjoy photography and think there's an audience for what you do, I encourage you to pursue that. And a great time to pursue it. You don't have to jump in with both feet and make it a full-time gig. It can be an evening, weekends, or your off time kind of thing where you learn the technical things and you practice so that you're a professional the minute someone pays you. So I hope that helps a little bit. So lots of different ways to be a photographer. If you want to talk more in detail about thoughts you're having, leave a comment below, send me an email at Highline, and we can discuss. So there's a couple questions here about journalism photography. So journalism, one's a question about gear and one's a question about how do you get into it, can you make money? And the first, how do you get into it and can you make money? I don't know anymore. I think my understanding of the journalism field these days is there's very few photographers that work for a specific newspaper or news outlet. Most of the time they're freelance, which means they're going to activities, events, and things, and they're taking photos and hoping someone will buy them. So they're not employed, they're freelance. There's very few newspapers, like I said, that have have full-time photographers. Even Sports Illustrated has few photographers. They usually will hire freelance for specific gigs, events. So it's kind of hard to be a full-time, I think, working journalist photographer these days. It's everybody's got a phone, so a lot of photographs you see in newspapers and in print these days or online are from phones. So, yeah. The question about gear with journalism photography, you want a rugged camera that focuses fast, that does well in low light, and you probably want small and light lenses. You don't want these monsters most of the time. You want something smaller like this. And the advantage of this kind of lens as well is they let in lots of light, prime lenses, and less obtrusive. And this field of view, like on these prime lenses, is more similar to what our eyes see. So it's going to be more factual, less interpretive, like a telephoto or a super wide angle lens would be. Those add an artistic interpretive element to the scene, to the photograph, that may not be factual. Prime lenses, fast lenses that let in a lot of light, and a rugged, durable, weather resistant, fast focusing, fast burst mode, so you can take lots of photos in a sequence and catch that moment. So that's a little bit about gear for photojournalism. Here's the next question about photography business, and it's about selling print. So like what I've got on the wall behind me. How do you price those? It depends. It depends. The short answer is the more popular you are, the more demand you have, the higher the price can be. I'll say this in general about photography business and pricing. Pricing. How do you price your services? How do you price your prints? There's always going to be someone less expensive. So don't race to the bottom. Don't race for, be as low as you can. Be somewhere that, again, is maybe on that continuum of a happy medium that feels good in value. It feels like it's a good value for the customer, the client, and worthwhile for you to pursue. So what do I mean by that? Like photo prints, I have some prints on Etsy. I have some 8x10s. I sell them for $24. I can live with that. I print them myself here on my printer. Now there's photographers I follow on YouTube who they sell their prints for lots more than that, somewhere between $60 and $100. And sometimes more than that, depending on the size. So again, if you have a larger audience, you can sell for more. All right, so that's the print price question. Do I have advice for a new photographer searching to be an assistant? So this is a great way to get in the photography business as well as to learn what it really takes. One of the things I think that surprises most people about photography and any art as a business, especially a solo business, is how little time you actually spend creating the art and how much time you spend doing all the other things like marketing and your paperwork and correspondence with clients and networking and all that stuff. So how do you become a photography assistant where you can actually see what it takes? And my suggestion is find maybe a local photographer that whose work you like. Search on the Instagram or YouTube or maybe even Craigslist, less on Craigslist maybe, or just Google Seattle photographer, or Seattle car photographer, Seattle portrait photographer, Seattle wedding photographer. See what comes up. See if you find some people whose work you think, I'd like to do stuff like that. And then follow along for a little while. Make some comments. You got to be patient in this approach. Make comments on their social media posts if they do that, and then write them an email and say, hey, I'm interested. I'm a student at Highline or wherever you are currently, and I'd be interested in at least maybe an informational interview where you can discuss and to see if you'd be interested in potentially hiring an assistant. I don't know. Give that a try. Maybe it's a one-off. Maybe you assist at a wedding event. Maybe you assist at a portrait shoot. It's not full-time, but it's at a gig. it doesn't hurt to ask. I think most photographers are very, in my experience, are very generous in replying and responding, and would be, open at least to an informational interview. I would offer that to you, but except I'm not very busy on my commercial side of things. But if you ever want to do an informational interview, leave a comment below or send me an email. So I hope that helps a little bit. All right, another business question is about creating. What kind of entity do you create your photography business? And again, my suggestion would be it depends. This question is specifically around a partnership, and whether you do that or you do solo. So the link I was sent related to this is for these two photographers, We Studio. They're, looks like Seattle, and well, maybe they're in Boston now. Anyway, it's two ladies, architecture and editorial. So they have two different kinds of silos they fit in, and they partner and work together, offer a wider range of things. So if you can find someone who you can partner with, that's awesome. Especially if you're an extrovert, and that built-in accountability of having someone who's relying on you is helpful. Having said that, obviously in any relationships, there will be complications and disappointments and hurdles, and yeah, people are complicated and messy. So in the midst of the potential upside of that, there's also potential downside. You just got to decide how it fits best for your temperament. Also, I would suggest to consider making sure, if you do a partnership of any kind or you're working with someone else, get everything you can in writing. Manage as many of the expectations about the finances, responsibilities, who does what, who gets what money-wise, who's bringing what investment into the company, who's bringing what gear, who does the gear. Oh my goodness, and probably get an attorney involved. So don't just rely on a handshake. Don't just rely on the fact that you've been friends for 5, 10, 20 years. When you throw money into the mix, when you throw business relationships into the mix, it adds a layer of complications. So get it in writing, get an attorney involved. It protects you both. It manages the expectations. All right. How do you get new business? That's the next photography question. And if I knew the answer to that, I would be offering you more opportunities to come tag along with me. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I know how to do it, but I haven't had success in doing it. Does that make sense? It's a mix of getting your name out there in social media, being, although it's harder to do right now, being physically going to meetings and meeting people and let them know what you do. It's connections, people who know you, who connect you to someone who needs a photographer. It takes time. In starting a photography business, the main hurdle is giving yourself enough time and having enough income to give you that time. It usually, if you read most business books, it says it takes about 2 years full-time to get you to a place where you have enough recurring income to get through the typical ups and downs of a $5,000 month or a $0 month. So yeah, so give yourself time. That's why it's great to start this potentially as you're maybe living at home or have this other job, and it's a add-on gig. Now, here's a little story about how I did get one photography job. I was walking around downtown Bellevue, and I went to a Starbucks and had a hot chocolate, and I had my camera sitting on the table in front of me. And a gentleman walked by, asked if I was a photographer. I said, yes. Do you do headshots? Yes. I would like to have a headshot done. Would you be interested? And so we had started this whole conversation, and I got a gig because I had my camera sitting on a table at a Starbucks. You never know. It depends. We're all different. I would say network. Tell people what you do. Tell people you're a photographer. Carry your camera with you everywhere. Create opportunities for yourself. Be persistent and consistent in your marketing, messaging, and just be you. I know, easier said than done. All right, let's see. A couple questions here about portfolio. And building a portfolio. So here's what people can look at and see what you do. I'll just show you my example, how I approach it. I have portfolios for the different categories of photography I do. So I'll pull up my website here and we'll go to, so if I go to portfolio, I've got weddings, portraits, fine art, landscape, and architecture. So let's click on the weddings and it takes you to photos for a number of individual weddings. Okay, so how many photos should you have in a portfolio? Well, for weddings, you need to show a variety of demographics if you can, of style, of, you want to show the kind of work you want to keep doing. So, I don't know, 25 is a good number if you're going to have if you just had a portfolio of just wedding photos, your 25 best, that would be good. You want all your photos that you show, because the other question is here is, as you're sequencing your portfolio, where do you kind of hide the not so good ones? And I would say, where do you put the best ones, the beginning or the end? And I would say definitely at the beginning, get some in the middle and some at the end. If there's some that are not quite so good, don't even show them. If you don't want to take more photos that or look like that, don't show it. If it's a little out of focus, if it's not quite right, don't show it. Yeah, because the perception of our quality of work is only as good as the weakest, least interesting photo that we show. So be aware of that. Let's see about portfolio. What else we got in here? There was a question about profitability, and again, that depends. Like how much do you make on a wedding, and da 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 da. Just using wedding and portrait photography as an example, the prices are all over the place. You can get someone to do a wedding photography for your whole day for probably $200 or $300. You can also get someone to do it for $5,000 or $6,000. And portraits you can get for $50 to thousands of dollars. So it depends on, remember, there's always going to be someone less expensive than you. So when I set up my pricing, what I did is I did a Google search for on weddings. I searched like the South area, Des Moines and South, Kent, Redmond, Bellevue, kind of where I'm at. To search and then I went to the wedding photographers and looked at their pricing, and most photographers post their pricing. Say that 10 times fast, post their pricing. And what I tried to do was be in the middle of that. So there were some that were less expensive than me, a lot that were more expensive, and I was kind of at the average. So that's how I came up with my pricing. Profitability-wise, the nice thing is, we're selling a service, so there's not really a cost. I mean, yes, we have the gear and the cameras and the lenses and stuff and getting there and gas in a car, but there's not a fixed, generally cost of goods sold, so it's almost all profit. So that's nice. But getting the gigs can be hard, especially right now in COVID time. A little harder for wedding photographers and event photographers to make a go of it. So I think that's all, or kind of covers the bulk of the business questions. If you have another question, if you have different answers you would like to contribute, drop those in the notes, in the comments below. And we're going to move on to creativity and inspiration. Just one question here, and it's a reference to a Sean Tucker video we watched in class about motivation and inspiration. And the question is specifically, how do I get motivated? How do I find motivation? And I think I've said this in videos before. The hardest thing for me in getting motivated is getting off the couch, is overcoming the inertia of whatever I'm currently doing, which is often nothing or not much. So getting up is the hardest part for me. And then once I get moving, once I get doing it, then it just, once I warm up, so your first few photos are warm-ups, they may be terrible, you may not like them, that's okay. It's like just, stretching your muscles. And then you get into the groove of taking and creating images, and there you go. So it's a physical act, so you do have to, physically moving helps. getting over whatever your mental blocks are, anticipations. That's important too. It's just finding the way that works for you. So it depends. Again, here we go with a depends answer. But in the act of creating is where I find my most motivation and inspiration. By being out, doing things, getting away from these four walls, even if it's just a walk around my condo, is super helpful. Take your camera with you and watch for the little and big things that surprise you along the way. All right, so that's creativity, inspiration. We're going to move on to portraits next. All right, so here we go with the section of questions about portraits. And there's a couple questions about posing to get us started here. And I will confess that is one of my weakest links, is giving direction to people. Here's something I think that's interesting that I've discovered. Most people nowadays, especially if they're a bit younger than me, are really comfortable in front of the camera. They've grown up with a phone in front of their face, being the subject of their own or their friends' photos more so than I did growing up. So they're pretty comfortable with the camera. They're pretty comfortable moving, and they kind of know, especially ladies seem to know this, how to position their body so it looks good. So having said all that, most of my learning on posing has come from YouTube videos. Just go and do a YouTube search for posing videos. If your friends are not used to posing, there's a bunch of videos on how do you direct people who aren't models. Basically, here's what it comes down to. I think the most effective portraits, the most interesting portraits, are ones that capture this magic moment of authenticity in the person you're taking a photo of. So how do you get that? My theory is you being comfortable as the photographer, and then helping the person on the other end of the lens be comfortable with this pointed at them. So don't hide behind the camera, especially if you've got a big lens on it, and don't talk. So it's a conversation is important, even if you're talking about just the weather. That gets people out of the thought of, oh my gosh, someone's taking my picture, I have to smile, and you get this fake smile. It's, you have to practice it. You have to find your way that you like to get people to do that. So I encourage you to practice with friends and families, family members, to see if, let them take your picture, and you can practice the process of taking the picture as much as the actual end result of taking the photo. So lots and lots of practice. And that's one of the other questions about posing. Do you find, is it important to get to know a client before taking photos? And most of the time, I've never met the people. I just did a headshot photo yesterday. I hadn't met the guy. So in some ways, for me at least, and again, this is it depends answer. I don't feel like I need to know the person before I go and create their photo, especially like for a headshot. It's more factual. It's like a news yearbook photo kind of thing for a business. If I'm doing weddings and things like that, it's great to get to know people beforehand so you can get a sense of their style, know their special moments, know just a little bit more about them, so you know what will be important uniquely to them in a way that you might create images for them. So again, it depends. It depends. Let's see. I think I got all that kind of covers the posing and portrait questions. So I think that mostly covers the posing and portraits questions. I encourage you, if you're interested in portrait photography, to practice as much as you can. Get your friends and family, get one person even, and then just take their photo almost, if you can, every day. Try different types of light. Try window light, go outside, try minimal light, try lots of light, try all the different things. Practice your technique of conversation with the person, practice your technique with the camera. Practice. Practice, practice, practice. All right, let's move on to some gear questions. Let's start with, well, I'm going to start with the first question so I don't get lost. What tripod do you recommend? And this is in relation to the person who asked the question. Have trouble with mine being too short to get the height I need for my photo. I will answer that question in a minute. What tripod do I recommend? I'm going to have to move a little bit. So, tripod and tall tripods. Ugh. All right, so here is, this tripod is so tall, it doesn't even fit in the frame. So I'm about 5'9", so this goes how much taller? So it's this much taller than me. So what is that, about a foot and a half? So it's about almost 7 feet tall. Okay, nice tall tripod. I've had this tripod for about 15 years, I think. They don't currently make this one anymore. It's a Manfrotto. It's aluminum. I think it costs about $150 for the legs, and then the head is a separate piece. That costs about $80 to $100 for this one. You can spend lots more on tripods. Hang on, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So let's talk about tripods. There's a bazillion different ways to go with tripods. Like the one I just showed you is super durable. It's thick, it's big, it's heavy-ish. I think it's about 5-6 pounds. But it's built like a tank. It's just gonna last forever. You can spend lots more on tripods than I did on that. You can spend thousands of dollars just on the legs, another $1,000 on the head, carbon fiber, unicorn tears, magic, things like that. Stay away from plastic. Stay away from $50 tripods. Get yourself a tripod that fits you. You know, what's the good one is it depends. Here's the other end of the spectrum. This little Pixie, it's called. It's a little tabletop tripod. It works great. Works even on a full-size camera like this. These are about $20. They come in pink, also by Manfrotto, so it's Italian. Kind of cool. Also have a couple travel tripods, these guys, so they fold up. This one, the blue one, is a little less sturdy with heavy weight, so I don't use it very much for camera stuff. This one is nice and sturdy. It's you can see it's larger, so there's a trade-off. Physics, people, physics. This one is quite nice. I do like this a lot. This is by Sirui, is S-I-R-U-I. Is that what it is? S-I-R-U-I, yes. This is MiPhoto. And then also have this little guy, this tabletop that I was going to use. I used for a little while for holding my video camera, but I really like it because it's teeny tiny. And it's kind of James Bond-ish in that. This is also by Sirui, and it goes tall. So, I mean, you go, that's kind of cool. Downside is, again, it's not super stable because of the way the legs work. But it works. We use this now for phones, video conference, Zooming with phones. And then last but not least, I have a tripod that my camera is resting on right now for this video. And it's by a company called Obin. It's about $90 right now. I think I paid a little less than that. It goes on sale occasionally, but it's a neat, tidy little tripod. It's carbon fiber, not very big. They do make one that goes to almost 30 inches, so it's kind of, again, that medium size. But I quite like it. It's holding my video camera now just at the right height, I think. Yeah, tripods. Tripods and camera bags. I have too many of both of those things. So tripods, there we go. That's a gear question. Next gear question. Gear for interior design photography. Interior design photography is often wide angle photo, so you're gonna need a wide angle lens. Oftentimes you will often be on a tripod, so you don't need a super fast lens, a lens that lets a lot of light with the f2.8 kind of thing. You can do f4.0. You don't need a super technical camera. You don't need a $4,000 camera. You can do a $1,000 camera or $500 because it's on a tripod. You're gonna turn down the ISO, let the shutter speed, the longer duration do the work. And if you have windows in the scene, you're probably gonna do HDR photos so you can get the window not be overexposed and get good light on the inside. So you can use lots of little tips and tricks kind of sort of to get good photos that don't require you to have fancy, super expensive camera gear. Okay. Wide angle lens is probably your biggest thing. You probably want, if you're on an APS-C, so a crop sensor camera, you probably want somewhere 10 to 15 millimeters. If you're on a full frame camera, somewhere 15 to 18 millimeters, maybe 20, 24-ish. Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay. Hope that helps on that gear. So next gear question is related to portraits photography. Use natural light for portrait or a ring light, or if you don't have the equipment. It depends. Most of my portraits are done with natural light, although it is awesome to have the knowledge of how to use artificial light, off-camera artificial light, flash. There's a class here at Highline, Art 148, which is portrait and professional photography. We haven't offered it during the online class time because it does not work very well in that format. When we get back to being on campus, we will have that class again. So I do teach how to do portrait lighting with artificial light. With these are called speed lights, battery-powered flash. Be comfortable with both. Flash and artificial light gives you more options because you can take the light where you need it. You can compensate for light that's not great. You can shape the light, modify the light if you have the ability with artificial light, where oftentimes if you're just relying on window light, then you need the right time of day, the right conditions outside to take the photo you want. So hope that helps. Is it necessary to have several telephoto or wide-angle lenses for the DSLR camera? And the answer to that is no. I'll reference my friend again, who only for the longest time had one 50mm lens. And she did events, weddings, product photography, travel photography, portraits with that one lens. I have more lenses. That's not even all of them. I have some more here. I think I have... Right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lenses. Yeah, it's a problem. You really only need one. And having limits is good. Knowing that I have to work with this, you find ways to make it work. You find ways to make it work. When you have all these lenses, it can be... too many choices and you don't know what to do, and then you don't do anything. So limit yourself. It's a good thing. Yeah, long story on lenses. So is it important to have add-ons? Here's the next question. Like flashes, filters, and tripods. Yeah, it gives you more options and flexibility. I would think if I was going to add anything after you get a camera, I would get a good tripod. Get a good tripod because it lets you do long exposures, and these are inexpensive, anywhere from $150 to $400. I think this one was $130-ish. So yeah, if they're made well, they'll last just about forever. Other than that, I don't know about. I don't use filters except for neutral density, which are basically like sunglasses for your camera. They're just dark gray over your lens. I don't use filters for color. I use Lightroom for that. Yeah, and flash is occasional, but I know how to use it. So the more you know how to do things, the more ingredients you have you have more options of what meals you can prepare, using a food metaphor. If all you have is is one lens and stuff, you can still do lots of different things. You just have to work harder at it. Okay. And then we've got a question about best brick and mortar, so a physical store locally for purchasing photography gear. And let me give you two of them here in the Seattle area. The first one is the one I go to because it's a little easier for me to get to. It's Kenmore Camera up in Bothell. Kenmore Camera, come on. And they're having a sale. Well, I'm recording this video in December, so they're having a bunch of Christmas sales. So kenmorecamera.com. They're having a sale right now on Canon and Sony gear. Next week it's Fuji gear. I'm going. The other local camera store is, hang on. The other local camera store is Glazer's Camera in Seattle. It's the South Lake Union area. Both are great stores. Both have tons of stuff. Both have folks who've been working there for many, many years, and they really enjoy photography. So great places to go. Head there. Both will do online and free shipping over a certain amount. So it's just like shopping at Amazon, except you're supporting a local business. All right. What else we got? What equipment is needed to capture time-lapse photography? Here's our next question. Time-lapse photography. I love doing time-lapse. I got to remember to do it again soon. And this question is specific about the long-term, several-day time-lapse, like on nature programs. So I'm not super familiar with this, so I had to look it up. I use this thing called Google, and I looked up long-term time-lapse, and I came to this website. There's a website called timelapsenetwork.com, and then I'll include this article. I'll have a resource page on Canvas for y'all. This is a long page with a ton of gear and what to do for recording the time-lapse stuff long-term. Generally, for long-term time-lapse, you're probably not going to use a camera like this. There are some, you're going to probably use a smaller, a different kind of camera. But anyway, there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into this. And here is a good resource for reading and gearing and all that good stuff. So hope that helps there. All right, so those are the gear questions. Thank you for those. If you think of any other ones you want to add, just add them below. All right, let's move on to miscellaneous. What tips do you have for being a travel photographer? How do you find scenes that are capture worthy? So I've only traveled internationally once. I went to London in 2018. I followed a bunch of places, a bunch of London-specific photographers and hashtags and websites. Not websites, accounts on Instagram and before I went. So I knew where I wanted to go. So do some social media research before you go. There's the typical, there's the postcard shots, the ones that everybody gets, and those are good to get too. Get those because everybody expects it. But for me, I'm looking for those maybe special moments, hidden details, little things that most people tend to walk by. So those are what tends to be more interesting to me. And again, depends on what you want to take pictures of, what you're really looking for. When you're traveling and the travel is, it depends on which part is more important, the photography or the travel. If the travel is more important, don't let photography get in the way of enjoying these new experiences. But if it's the photography, then you have to be willing to take time and probably not move as much. So you have to, you can't move as fast paced. You have to really, because you're depending on the weather and the light. So you might need to spend a whole day at one place just to get sunrise or sunset, or wait for the clouds to clear. So just be aware of that. There's another question about travel and what kind of gear to take. When I went to London, I think I took 3 lenses, but the one I took most of the pictures with is my handy dandy trusty do-it-all zoom lens, my 18-135. The other lens I used a bunch was my wide angle for interiors and architecture, the 10-24. So those are the 2 lenses I use just about all the time. So keep it light. Don't be fussing with changing lenses all the time. I think zoom lenses are good for travel because they let you be in the moment, and kind of a neat combination of emphasis on the travel part and the photography part. So that's my opinion on that. Now, this is a little bit bigger lens, but it's not this monster. So so find a happy middle ground. There'll be compromises in Like this doesn't do really, it's not a very fast lens. It doesn't let in a ton of light. So that's partially why I brought these guys too, the little tripods. So it all connects. Let's see. This is a question about aperture and getting photos of groups. How do you know what aperture to use when, like if you've got a person in the front, a person in the back, and in the middle, and then a person in the back? How do you get them all in focus? And that's one of the wonderful things about mirrorless cameras is when you're looking through the viewfinder, you can set it up to see the depth of field before you click the photo. So if you have a mirrorless camera, what you're looking at is in focus, DSLR will show you the widest open aperture, so it'll be the shallowest depth of field. So you got to take the picture and then double check first. Again, this is a depends answer on depth of field because it's going to depend on your focal length, your size of your aperture, the distance of view to the subjects from each other, subjects from background. Yeah, it's complicated. You just got to practice. You're probably not going to shoot at your smallest number, widest opening. You're probably going to be somewhere between f8 and f11. Those are good, safe, gets a lot in focus apertures and good sharp apertures. The image resulting is sharp. That's what I mean. All right, so let's do a question about harsh daylight. And there's no cover. Is it better to protect the highlights or the shadows? And again, it depends. When in doubt, remember we did that whole section on a whole class on HDR and pano photos. So HDR would be helpful when you've got harsh, bright light and dark shadows. Do an HDR photo. If you don't remember how to, go watch that video. Go look at Google and see how your camera does that. But HDR would help you with that. And if you have to choose, you got to then think about story. If I have to choose, do I protect the highlights or the shadows? What is your story? Is the story more in the dark parts of the photo or the bright parts of the photo? And then you protect that part. It depends. How did I become interested in photography? What made me dive into it? First project, bucket list, what type of thing is your favorite to photograph? So this is a question for me, which is my favorite topic to talk about. What got me into photography, I got my first camera as an 8th grade graduation present from my aunt and uncle, and I bugged my friends mercilessly, taking pictures of them eating food all throughout high school. So it was mostly people then. I kind of set it aside for a while, got back into it when my son was born and took pictures of him as he was growing a little bit. Kind of stopped until he got then into Little League, and then I got a digital camera and a very slow one, but I took some pictures. And then we went from there. And then what really got me into being intentional about it was fast forward a few years to my son's senior high school project, which he did on photography. And watching him work inspired me to look at things differently. He was great at doing interesting compositions. And I'm like, why am I standing up? He's laying down. So that was that. And then 10 years ago, I started teaching at Highline, and that was the next level up in really understanding how the buttons, knobs, dials work, how the technical side informs the creative side. Bucket list for me, I want to go back to Europe, especially the UK. There's so many beautiful places I want to go photograph there. There's a lot, obviously, in the US I want to go see too. I kind of want to get back to the East. I haven't been there in forever, since I was teeny tiny. So kind of travel stuff. I love architecture. I do love people photography, but they talk back and buildings don't. So building doesn't want to see the photo. If you take someone's photo, they want to look at the back of your camera and judge right away, which is fine. So architecture, ordinary beauty, that kind of stuff is my favorite type of photography. And then again, once I get started taking photos of people, I really do enjoy that. So it's a little bit of everything. It depends. It's even my answer for myself. It depends. Let's see. We've got... here's a question, places you'd recommend for beginners to take photos. And this is in relation to, it's embarrassing to walk around with a camera and be taking pictures, to be seen taking pictures. And I get that too. Here's my suggestion. One of the things that's cool about almost anywhere you live in the Seattle area, if you drive 10 minutes, if you have a car, I assume, or maybe it's right in your neighborhood, you don't have to go very far to get to a place that maybe is a little woodlands, a little park, a place where there's not a lot of people, and you can go take and create new photos. So that'd be my recommendation. Just get out of your neighborhood and get out of the downtown, get out of city, or and then find a place where you can kind of be alone, and then you don't have to worry about other people watching you. The other solution is to not care what people think. You're never going to see them again. They're never going to see you again. So they probably can't even see you when you're doing this. You're behind the camera. They can't see you. So they don't know who you are. Just get over it. They're not going to think about you again. So don't think about them again. There you go. Dun, dun, dun. I think the last question here is, how do I go about taking photos inside and outside? Because it seems like the photos I take inside aren't as clear as the ones I take outside. And the reason for that is, what's the reason for that, class? How come the photos inside tend not to be as clear as the photos outside? What's the reason? This one isn't, it depends. Well, it is a little bit maybe, but the main reason probably is light. There's more light generally outside, even on a cloudy day, than inside with your lights on. So get outside or turn your ISO up a little bit if you're inside. Yeah, if you don't want to turn your ISO up, that's when you get a tripod and go for a longer exposure. This will hold the camera steady. Yeah, it depends a little bit. It all depends on the settings, your camera. If your ISO is too high, then you'll get noise and it doesn't look as good. All right, I think those are the questions for now. Those are the questions. If I missed one and you want to have me answer it, leave a comment below. If you have answers you think would be more effective than the ones I've shared here, I'd encourage you to leave those below. If you have other conversations you want to have with me on specifics, send me an email at Highline or stop by the Zoom time we have for class. So questions have been answered, I hope. This is one of my favorite classes. I hope the answers were helpful to you. And I look forward to seeing your photos, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.